So, Jay Ruud, what lovable book are we talking about today?
Well, Stacey Margaret Jones, I'll give you a hint. The Golem of Prague.
Oh, if that's a hint and not the title, I'm in trouble.
It's a hint.
Okay. Okay, I think I know what it is, but
I don't think you do.
what's my second hint? Have I read the book?
I don't know you haven't.
Oh, all right. What's my second hint?
Second hint is comic books.
Oh. Is it something by Isaac Bashevis Singer?
No.
Oh, then I'm out. What's the third hint for our listener?
The Escapist.
Oh,
If our listener has read this book, you'll definitely get it from there.
Is it Kavalier and Clay by Michael Chabon?
It is indeed.
Look
The
at me.
Amazing
How did I know
Adventures
that?
of Kavalier and Clay by Michael Chabon.
I have not read that book.
No, you have not. Why haven't you read that book, by the way?
Because it's very thick.
It's 704 pages, yeah. So you chickened out on that, huh? Even though the Golem of Prague is in it.
No judgments.
No, no, I never judge you.
All right. Well, welcome to Between the Covers, where my husband, author Jay Ruud, and I, author Stacey Margaret Jones, discuss one lovable book per week from his carefully curated list of the 100 most lovable novels in the English language, and also where he judges me for having not read his choice of the week. So that's an extra added benefit that we are providing our listeners this week.
If you like that sort of thing.
Yes, I'm sure. Who doesn't love judgment? What other lists is this on? Because you built your list from a lot of source lists that you weeded out. So what list does this book appear on, or is it on any list?
Actually, this was not on any of those lists that I started with.
Oh, okay.
Partly because it's a fairly recent book. It was came out in 2000. It won the Pulitzer Prize in 2001.
Okay.
It is on a few lists that I've seen of late. In 2009, Entertainment Magazine did a list of the best books of the decade. And they put Amazing Adventures of Kavalier and Clay in as number 3. In 2019, The Guardian in Britain did a list of the 100 best books of the 21st century. And they had The Amazing Adventures of Kavalier and Clay ranked far too low at number 57. But they're in Britain, and it's an American book. In 2024, the New York Times did its own list of the best books of the 21st century, and it came in as number 16 on that list.
All right. So it was in your listiverse.
It made an appearance in the listiverse.
Have we met him? Do I have the memory of meeting him? Okay.
I think the first year we were in Conway.
Okay. Yes, he was at something.
He came to UCA. It would have been 2 years after his Pulitzer Prize.
Okay.
And he was there. Yes.
Yeah, he was a nice guy. And for our listener who doesn't know it, if they don't know, UCA is the University of Central Arkansas in Conway, Arkansas, which is in the center of Arkansas.
Hence, it is the University of Central Arkansas.
Well, they get some great writers there. And I was like, I think we met him. So are you going to earn the golden harp of success or the sad trombone of failure in your down and dirty summary today?
We'll find out.
What is your down and dirty summary of the book?
It focuses on two Jewish lads, Kavalier and Clay. Actually, it's Sammy Clayman, who's a 17-year-old Brooklyn kid who lives with his mom and is a would-be writer. And Joseph Kavalier, who's his cousin, who's 19 years old, who arrives on a bus from Czechoslovakia. And Joe is a gifted artist. He wants to make money quick so that he can bring his family over from Prague, because this is 1938, 839.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, if it was Czechoslovakia, it was before 1992.
Yeah, well, it was way before.
Yeah.
And it's Nazi occupied.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And they're Jews.
Yeah.
And he wants to get them out of there. So Sammy, who recognizes Joe's artistic talent, he sees some of his drawings, takes him to his own place of employment, which is called the Empire Novelty Company in New York. And at this point in time, the newest novelty for American kids is the comic book craze, which comes with the amazing debut of Superman in 1938.
Right.
And that sets off this comic book boom. And the two of them create a comic book character called the Escapist, which becomes incredibly popular. And the owner of this company basically is cheating them out of a lot of profits.
Okay. All right.
And there's a lot of things that happen after that, but that's sort of the background of the story.
Okay. Well, I'm going to give you the golden harp of success, but you were bumping right up against the sad trombone of failure there.
Well, okay. There's 703 page
I know,
novel.
but
It's
a down
hard
and dirty summary is just that, because now we're going to go on and talk a little more about the book in terms of why it made it to your lovable list. Because as we say every episode, I hope, these aren't good for you books. Like, these aren't the classics that you should read so that you can...
Some of them are.
Some of them are, but they're on your list because they're enjoyable reading.
Yeah.
So what makes this, for you, a lovable book?
I'll tell you, it took me 15 years to read this book after it won the Pulitzer Prize.
After you picked it up?
No.
Oh.
after it won the Pulitzer Prize, I
you didn't read it for 15 years?
Didn't read it for 15 years. Because, you know why? It was long. But it's the kind of book that you can't put down. It doesn't matter how long it is. It could have been 1,000 pages. It could have been 2,000 pages. I would have kept reading.
Were you sad when it ended?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
I
the
know
kind
that
of
feeling.
book that makes you sad when it ends. And I liked it so much that I became a Chabon completist.
Oh, yes,
and
that's
read
right.
all of his other novels, which are all pretty good.
Yeah.
Especially there's one called the Yiddish Policeman's Union, which is a kind of alternate history book, which won a couple of the big awards in science fiction, the Nebula Award and things like that.
Did you write that book that was a movie about the writing teacher?
The Wonder Boys.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was another
It's
of his
such
books.
different genres.
Yeah, all the books are very different.
Yeah.
But they're all really, really good.
I haven't read Wonder Boys, but I love that movie. And I tell that line to my writing students all the time, which is, he tells his students all the time, and he teaches a creative writing class. Michael Douglas does.
Yeah.
And he tells them that they have to make decisions. And then Katie Holmes is one of his students, and she reads his 2,000 page manuscript, and she says, you know how you were telling us we have to make decisions? You didn't make a single decision. You just put it all in. I love that scene. That's a great movie. I should read that book too. And you've read Wonder Boys, obviously. So
Yeah.
So why this book of all of his?
Well, it has so much in it, and the characters are so relatable and lovable. And I love comic books, or I used to. I don't read them anymore.
You could.
But I could if I wanted to. It's about the golden age of comic books between 1939, 1954. 54 is the last year in the narrative. It covers a 15-year period. And 54 is when Estes Kavalier in the Senate was doing he had a committee that was looking into juvenile delinquency.
Yeah, I'm familiar with Estes Kavalier.
Yeah, and they one of the things they were focusing on was comic books as contributing to juvenile delinquency, which is completely idiotic. But anyway, it does put the kibosh on Sammy's comic book career.
He used that real life kind of era as the start and finish of his novel.
Yeah, and that frames the novel.
Yeah, that's interesting.
But there are other really important things that are going on.
Sure.
Like the Nazi takeover of Czechoslovakia, and then ultimately the
Cold War.
The Cold War, but also first the hot war.
Yes,
In
of
World
course.
War II, actually, Joe Cavalier meets the love of his life, whose name is Rosa Sachs, who's also an artist. And he makes her into a superhero in the comics. At least he models his comic character, Luna Moth, on her. And meantime, Sam Clay is in love with the guy who's playing the escapist, their comic book character, in the Hollywood movie of the escapist. That doesn't turn out so well. But a tragedy occurs that you don't see coming. And it destroys Joe so much that he just leaves. He quits the business and he joins the army. It's right after Pearl Harbor.
Oh, okay.
He actually ends up in Antarctica.
Oh, well done.
He joins, I guess it's the Navy he joins, not the Army. And he's stationed on Antarctica, which is an interesting little twist. But the things that happen are just really interesting, and the characters are really interesting. And the reason I mentioned the Golem of Prague is that's how Joe actually escapes from Prague.
The golem helps him?
The golem helps him.
So let's talk a little bit about the golem legend, because the golem legend is that the Rabbi Lev made a golem, which is a kind of man.
Made out of clay.
Yeah.
Of the clay of the river.
He's a big kind of, monster, I guess. He's not human, but he's man-sized, man-shaped. And he's made out of the mud from the Vltava River. And Rabbi Lev whispers the name of God in his ear, I think, and he comes alive to protect the Jews of Prague. And he's so destructive that he has to be decommissioned. And the legend is that his remains are still in the old new synagogue in Prague.
Well, they're not in this book.
Yeah, okay.
Because they had already been moved out of there. The Jews of Prague don't want the Nazis to get a hold of the golem.
Right.
They're going to ship the golem out of the country in a coffin.
Oh, wow.
And Joe Cavalier, his friend and teacher, Kornblum, who's a magician and escape artist, teaches him to be a magician and an escape artist. That's how he wants to be making his living anyway.
Who he?
He teaches, not the golem.
I was like, the golem?
He teaches Joe Cavalier to be a magician and an escapist. He arranges to have Joe shipped out of the country in the coffin carrying the golem.
Oh,
which is delivered in Lithuania, I think it is.
Okay.
Or Estonia, one of those Baltic countries. And from there, Joe escapes to Japan, and then to California, and then to New York, where he first meets Sam.
Right. Okay.
But that's how he gets out of Prague. And it's his career as a magician and escapist that makes him think about what do we want to make our superhero? He's going to be the escapist.
Oh, okay, because that's how he saved his own life.
Yeah.
It reminds me of another book that I love very much.
What is that?
Potok, in the beginning. He imagines the golem of Prague protecting him from the bullies in his New York City neighborhood. So
that's Chaim Potok.
Yeah. What do you think? What's in the kind of zeitgeist at the time that Chabon is, or what was Chabon inspired by for this? Or just, is he responding to kind of the epicness of 20th century history?
I think he's just responding to his love of comic books.
Right.
He writes about a lot of things in his books that he's interested in. Baseball.
Yeah.
In Summerland, I think is the name of the book. But he also really seems to have loved comic books.
Well, that's something I do tell my writing students, is to write the book they want to read, and write about things that they're fascinated by and interested in exploring. It sounds like that's why his books are so different, because he follows his interests where they lead.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Why do you think comic books are popular?
Well, I've never.
You're not a big comic book.
Well, I was actually in junior high, aka middle school. I was really into these comic books called Elf Quest, and they were about elves, right? That were very beautiful, and the world in which they, this fantasy world in which they lived, and they were beautifully drawn. So I was really into those. It probably has to do with the marriage of the words and the plot and the image, the art of it, right? Sometimes we want to imagine things for ourselves, but sometimes it's really enjoyable to see the whole vision that the creators have for us, for their material, instead of imagining a character looking this way or that way. I also think early readers are drawn to it because it can be a way to marry the enjoyment of the art and the action, so to speak. I think on the creator side, I think it's just a wonderful thing to be able to go where the material asks you to go. I suppose that's part of the appeal for the creator. What do you think? I mean, why did you love comic books?
2000 is probably about when graphic novels are really, when comic books are turning into graphic novels.
Right, because I think that's when we read
important.
Mouse. I remember reading that.
Yeah. So I think it's
kind of the elevation of the comic.
That's partly why it comes out at that time. But there's another, you kind of implied it, I guess, especially with something like Elf Quest. Comic books are an escape.
Yeah. It's a whole world.
It's a whole world.
That's true.
And it's an escape from this world.
Yeah.
And Tolkien talks about escapism as one of the features of fairy stories.
Right.
And it certainly, the comic books have a lot of similarities to fairy stories. But he says, people talk about escapism like it's a bad thing.
Right. And I know he valued it.
Yeah. Because, escape from your responsibilities is probably not a good thing. Escape from Nazi Germany is a good thing. And that's part of what this particular book is about. It's escaping from this force that's there, that's keeping you down. And the main character is the escapist.
Right. Obviously that's a motif throughout, right? The comic books are escape in a paper form. He's an escape artist. He escapes from Prague. Like, that's the motif throughout the novel. That's interesting.
And then, there's this anti-Nazi thing that goes, obviously, goes through the book. They are Jews after all, and they did escape from Nazi-occupied Czechoslovakia. The cover of the first issue of The Escapist, Joe does this drawing of the cover while he's waiting for Sammy to try to get their boss to agree to fund the comic books. And it's the escapist punching Hitler in the jaw.
There you go.
Which is actually a play on the real first cover of Captain America.
Why might someone not love this book?
I don't know, because it's long. I guess if you are put off by long books, if you're a Nazi, you might not like this book. Okay. There's there are some Sam. This is 1954 and earlier,
right? So people aren't.
So people are not going to be open about their sexuality, and he's trying real hard not to be gay, but he loves this guy, and it's something that he would like to escape from, and can't do that.
Right. Interesting. What are you ranking it? We have how many?
Well, this is number 17.
Okay. And where are you ranking this out of 1 through 17?
I'm going to put this at number 6.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Right after To Kill a Mockingbird.
So no number 57 for you, because you said that was too low.
Way too low.
All right. Well, that's very high. That's obviously that you hold this book in high esteem. So.
I cherish this book.
Well, maybe I will read it.
Just lovable.
I didn't realize it was so proggy.
Well,
I love
there's
Prague.
a lot of Prague in it, actually. Mostly it's New York, but and Antarctica.
all places I love and have been.
There you go.
Yeah, I think you may have convinced me. I mean, I've blown my book reading target for the year anyway, so I'm reading wildly. But I think the thing you said about, when you answered my question that you were sad it was over. Like when I read Middlemarch, when I was living in Prague, I took that book everywhere with me. It's long. It's probably 800 or 900 pages, maybe 1,000. I don't know. I remember being really sad when it was over because I had spent so much time with the characters for so long, that when you close that the cover on the last page, you're kind of like, oh, I'm not going to see you tomorrow. Was that like your reaction to this? I mean, what was so?
Yeah, just what was going to happen next, and where, I was sad when different parts of it ended. I was sad when Joe left because I was like, oh, we're not going to have those scenes anymore. But then he's in Antarctica and doing all this stuff, and I'm like, wow, this is incredible. And then that ended, and then it was like, okay, what are Joe and Rosa Sachs doing back in New York? And
you just wanted to know more all the time.
Yeah.
Well, that shows a really well-controlled narrative then too.
Yeah, it goes very, very fast.
Okay.
So is it time for chaos, reader?
I think it is. So I'm having trouble. Maybe our listeners can leave comments for us on what they do when they hit kind of a reading block, because I'm struggling a little bit to pick up the books I'm reading. I love them. I'm enjoying them, but I'm distracted by reading creative writing, students' work, and, other things that are going on. But in the past probably 24 hours or so, I've spent a lot of time with poems that give me comfort, and kind of going back to some of my favorite poems and looking up poets and their work that I find healing, right? And so, of course, Matthew Arnold's Dover Beach is my favorite. That last stanza, I think, is really amazing. And also Langston Hughes' poetry, other writer, and always Sylvia Plath. I find her to be very restorative because I feel like she channels her anger really well, really artistically. She's furious and it's beautiful.
You do not do black shoe.
So that's what I wanted to talk about today. Is there is no shame in going back to things that you love, and especially with the great poets. Every time you read that poem or that work, you're going to get something out of it you haven't gotten before, and it's always worth it to go back.
All right then.
So we'd like to thank our podmaster, Jerry Bruno, for making our podcast possible in every way. And also ask our listeners to comment, share, etc. Also tell one book lover about our podcast. We'd love that. And we'll see you next time on Between the Covers.